Good morning, I'm Gary DeWaal, and this is Bridging the Week for September 12th to 16th, and today is September 19th, 2016. Last week, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission Chairman, Timothy Massad, said he would recommend a one-year delay in lowering the de minimis swap dealer threshold from 8 to 3 billion US dollars. In addition, the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission reminded futures and option traders that position limits are not just a CFTC requirement when it fined a major international bank the equivalent of $325,000 US dollars for violating its position limits requirements. Autumn officially begins in the Northern Hemisphere this week, so before I get buried by falling leaves, let's get started. Chairman Timothy Massad of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission announced his intention to recommend to his fellow commissioners that they delay for 1 year the automatic reduction of the current interim swap dealer de minimis threshold amount scheduled to occur at the end of 2017. Currently, the threshold requiring registration of the swap dealer is 3 billion US dollars aggregate gross notional amount measured over the prior 12-month period. However, an interim threshold of 8 billion US dollars in effect until December 31st, 2017. Mr. Massad said he would make the recommendation to delay the de minimis threshold lowering because, quote, a delay is a sensible and responsible thing to do, and doing it now will provide much-needed certainty to market participants. End of quote. Mr. Massad indicated that a delay would permit the CFTC to potentially adopt a capital rule for swap dealers, as well as to study the impact of the recently implemented non-cleared swap margins rules before making a final decision on the de minimis threshold. It will also allow the CFTC to obtain better data on commodity swaps, markets that are different than interest rate and credit default swaps, where there's more data currently, said Mr. Massad. The Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission fined the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Limited the equivalent of approximately $325,000 US dollars, or 2.5 million Hong Kong dollars precisely, for violating its position limit rules on multiple dates from May 26 through August 1st, 2014. According to the SFC, during the relevant time, HSBC violated its futures equivalent position limits for the Hang Seng China Enterprise Index futures contracts and options contracts traded on the Hong Kong and Futures Exchange on 18 days. HSBC's breaches arose, said SFC, because during the relevant time, quote, there were no policy and procedures in place for position limit monitoring and controls in relation to HKFE listed products, end of quote, and, quote, there was no staff responsible for monitoring the net open positions of HSCEI related products entered into by HSBC's house account, end of quote. In announcing its sanction against HSBC, SFC noted that since its violations, quote, HSBC has taken steps to strengthen its internal controls on monitoring positions in HSCEI futures and option contracts to ensure compliance with the prescribed position limit, end of quote. So it's not just the Commodity Futures Trading Commission that has position limits to worry about. The Chicago Board of Trade fined Zi Guo Zhang, a non-member, $100,000 US dollars for engaging in non-competitive soybean futures trades between October 8th and November 8th, 2012, in order to transfer money from another trader's account to his trading account. He accomplished this, said the CBOT Business Conduct Committee, by prearranging 240 trades constituting 96 round-turn trades. Mr. Zhang transferred almost $31,000 US dollars through this mechanism. Mr. Zhang was also ordered to pay the amount transferred as restitution and was permanently banned from trading on any CME Group exchange, among other penalties. Separately, Standard Chartered Bank agreed to pay a fine of $75,000 US dollars to settle charges that it engaged in impermissible pre-execution communications in connection with transactions in soybean futures on quote-unquote several occasions between December 2012 and February 2013. CBOT claimed that during the relevant time, SCB discussed specific information regarding contract, side of the market, time of execution, and price and quantity with employees of a counterparty in connection with soybean futures contracts executed in connection with prepaid soybean swap agreements. However, said the CBOT Business Conduct Committee, such pre-execution conversations were not permitted in connection with CBOT agricultural futures contracts. Pre-execution communication rules vary widely from exchange to exchange and even among CME Group exchanges. Make sure you are familiar with them. And finally, the New York State Department of Financial Services proposed comprehensive cybersecurity requirements for banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions regulated by the DFS. Among other things, such covered institutions will be required to adopt a formal cybersecurity program to protect their information systems, which would be broadly defined to not only include a firm's, quote, resources organized for the collection, processing, maintenance, use, sharing, dissemination, or disposition of electronic information, end of quote, but any specialized systems such as, quote, industrial process control systems, telephone switching, and private and branch exchange systems, and environmental control systems, end of quote. Wow, air conditioning is covered. A covered institution cybersecurity program must, quote, perform, end of quote, certain mandatory functions including identifying internal and external cyber risk related to non-public information, using defensive infrastructures and implementing policy and procedures to protect the firm's information systems and non-public information, detecting and responding to cybersecurity events to mitigate any detrimental impacts, recovering from cybersecurity events, and fulfilling all reporting obligations. Covered institutions must appoint an individual as the Chief Information Security Officer with certain enumerated responsibilities, including preparing a written report twice a year assessing the covered entity's cybersecurity program. However, the proposed rules contemplate that a third party may perform the Chief Security Information Officer function. The proposed rules also contain detailed requirements for covered entities to ensure the security of non-public information that may be accessible by third parties doing business with a covered entity. Comments on the proposed rules will be accepted for 45 days following their publication in the New York State Register. The proposed rules are scheduled to be effective January 1st, 2017, with a 180-day transition period. Well, that's it for this week's edition of Bridging the Week. As always, there is more information in each article, and more articles on the article version of Bridging the Week on the website. Check it out. I'm Gary DeWaal. Have a great week, and until the next edition of Bridging the Week, ciao.